what I want to talk about then is I'm going to share some slides here from my computer and talk about when we think about learning in terms of learning measurement. We think of it in terms of a spectrum, okay? So what we want to do is we want to provide some learning to our team members, right? Our organization. That should, if people know how to do something, we hope to see that it will change their behavior and that will lead to some kind of impact on the business, right? So that's the spectrum. When we think about learning and development, we think about what we should train people on. We kind of start at that business impact level on the right. We're trying to think, what are we trying to change? So right now, with the coronavirus going on, it's really common that people are going, look, we have to change the way we do business. So think of it in terms of a hospital, right? A hospital is now in this new situation where we have all of these patients coming in with some disease we've never seen before, this coronavirus disease. So what are the things we want to see from a bottom line in the hospital? Well, we want to see that our doctors can accurately and efficiently diagnose the coronavirus, okay? That's going to be really important because we don't want to send people out not knowing if they have it or not. We want to see that our employees are all safe, that they're not going to catch it, right? Those are bottom line impact metrics. Those are things we can measure about the organization, big changes to the organization. So if we want to see that happen to the organization, then we have to think about what behaviors do we need to see from our employees? Okay, so if we want to see that we can accurately diagnose them, we have to see that you know how to use the tests, that you have the tests available, which we won't get into the political side of that. We want to know that you know how to accurately determine the symptoms. So these are behaviors that we want to see. If we're trying to keep our employees safe, we want to know that you know how to wear the face masks. We want to know that you know how to clean all of your equipment, right? These are behaviors, personal behaviors. You as the employee should be doing these behaviors and they will affect that bottom line. So learning and development groups, our job is to say, how can I teach you to do these behaviors? How can I teach you to run a test properly? How can I teach you to analyze a test properly? How can I teach you to wash your hands for 20 seconds? How can I teach you to wear the face mask at all times? How can I teach you to change your clothes after each patient that has been, right? That's the spectrum. When we think about it, we want to think about a series of things that we can teach you to do, that we can measure that you know how to do it. And if you've learned how to do it, hopefully it will help contribute to you changing these behaviors. And once you've changed those behaviors, that will hopefully affect the bottom line. So when we think about that, the problem we run into is that most people don't have a really good sense of how to assess. So probably most of you have either taken training at work or you've taken training at school where you finish the learning and then you get a test and the test is a pile of garbage, right? We've had teachers who give really easy tests. We have teachers who give tests that don't even make sense. What they're testing there is not necessarily, did you learn? Because that's what we want to know. Did you learn how to do these behaviors that are going to affect things? If I'm asking really simple test questions, I'm not able to find that out. And so when we think about assessment, we have to think about it from two perspectives. We have to think about how deeply are we learning, right? How intense is the learning, right? So are we assessing what they learned? And then also we have to think about when we're assessing it, because that's going to have some effect too. So what happens is in the last couple of weeks, I've been getting a lot of calls from people who are saying, well, we've got all this new learning we need to do. We've got a brand new world. We've got employees who are working from home. We've got a whole different situation because the economy has gone into a whole new space. We have to train all these people and we have to know that they learned. And they're coming to me with a brand new course that they release to teach their employees something new. And at the very end, they tack on some little test with silly questions. So, and they don't understand. They say, well, I don't understand how I'm supposed to show, let me go back a slide real quick. How am I supposed to show that this course that I gave, and then I gave this silly little test at the end, how does that translate to people behaving differently? And how does that translate to the bottom line? The reality is, if we're not thinking about how deeply we test, or how intelligently we test, or how accurately we test, and we're not thinking about when we're giving the test, we're not ever going to really be able to show that. We're not going to be able to show that did they learn. And so what we've always done in the past is focus on this, and this is called Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy was created in the 50s, 60s maybe, and the idea was that learning has different levels to it. So at the lowest level is what we call knowledge. That's just kind of recalling things we've heard, right? So just the most simple facts, the basic facts of things. Can you recall those simple basic facts? Then as we go up with each level, it's can you take that information and show that you know how to comprehend it. So now you're not just remembering the facts. Can you really understand why that fact is important? That's comprehension. Application is, can you take that fact, or can you take that fact and can you show how you would apply it? So it's not just remembering that that basic fact. It's now I can put it into a situation and actually apply it. When we get to the higher levels, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation, that's all about, can I take multiple facts from a number of different sources, and now can I put them together to come up with answers that are really more like a real world situation, right? And that's those levels, that's how all of us do our work anyway. At no point do we pull out operators manual, right? We don't pull out operators manuals for everything we do, right? We pull out operators manuals every once in a while to remember how to do certain steps. But the reality is we recall how to do those steps. And as we go through, we eventually get to a point where we can put different facts together. We can recall different facts, we know how to apply them, and we create them into something that is our typical workday. We've kind of synthesized all that information into our ability to do our job. Most tests, when we just tag a test at the end of a training, they're all at that knowledge level. So a really good example was one of my first jobs in this field. I was training new hires in a bank. They would go through 32 hours of training every week. And at the end of the week, we would ask them 10 questions. 32 hours of training, we'd ask them 10 questions. And the questions would be basic things like, what does the GFS in the GFS system stand for? Right? That's a knowledge fact. That's a recall fact. That's just some basic information that you need to know. You're not going to ever use that on your job. You're not going to need to know it on your job. Now, it might fit into something later that you can apply. It might inform a decision later, but it's not really a critical piece of information. I'm training you for 32 hours a week. I want to know at the end of that week that you can actually take all of this information, 32 hours of information, and really synthesize it into a job performance. And so when we're thinking about assessing, we have to start with this. And that was always where we got lost as an industry, is people would say, oh, okay, well, let's go ahead and do that. Let's kind of forward-thinking people would say, let's go ahead and apply Bloom's taxonomy to our learning. I will let you know there is a more recent version of Bloom's taxonomy that is really, really complex, because it takes into consideration now that there's virtual learning, now that there's a number of different ways people learn, there's a number of different systems we can learn on. This is the basic system, and it's really still valid. It's still, and the framework is still the same. We want to go from basic level information up to a much more synthesized ability to use that information practically. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the next thing that we run into is, okay, I understand I need to assess my learners, and I need to assess them at that level at which I'm trying to teach them. So I don't want to just assess, can you recall basic facts from the training? Can you recall little pieces of information that may or may not have any real impact? I want to assess them at those higher levels. I want to know that they can take the information I gave them and show me that they can do the job. They can do those performance behaviors, that they can do the things we want them to do that are going to have that impact on the business. I want them to be able to show me that they can understand how to use the mask correctly, that they understand how to wash their hands correctly. I want them to show me that they can understand how to use the tests, things like that. Then the question becomes, so when do we assess? And this is the big question that we run into, because there's so much confusion in the learning industry about that. And it's for a long time, we've always just tacked learning on at the end of the learning event. So you can see that on the left side there, that we basically, during the learning event, we bring people together. We either put them on an e-learning on a computer, we bring them into a classroom, whatever we do. At the very end, we give them an assessment. We give them a test. And we say, well, this is all they really need in order to learn. The problem we've run into is that we've spent 50 years of people giving those tests at those low levels. We've spent 50 years of people giving a test at the knowledge level, at the comprehension level, and we find that that doesn't necessarily tell us much about, did people learn? Did they learn how to do these tasks? So as a result, we've thrown out the baby with the bathwater. There's so many people out there who advocate and say, look, tests at the end of courses are useless. They don't tell us anything and they don't help. That's what my company, that's what MetriVerse, that's what we do. So our job is to actually run the statistical analyses that can show, did people learn? Did they learn is our kind of key phrase. And there's a rigorous set of statistics that you can run on assessments given after courses that show, did they learn? And that when I say did they learn, what I'm talking about is, did they learn as opposed to, did they guess? Did they cheat? Did they not get the information they needed? In other words, did we test at that really low level? Did we test at a level that was too high? Maybe they didn't have enough of the basic information in order to be able to evaluate or synthesize. We can tell all of that from statistics. So what we need to be able to figure out is that we don't want to throw assessments out. And there are a lot of people who advocate for that, and it's a terrible piece of advice. So we don't want to throw assessments out. We just want to make sure that when we do, we understand what we're getting with them. So there are a number of schools of thought that we've dealt with for a long time around when to give assessments. So one says what we've always seen. At the end of training, go ahead and give that test at the end. Next one's kind of come out and says, give it a couple days after, because obviously if I just had training, I'm going to remember everything that you just gave me. Maybe we should go back and maybe 3, 5, 7 days later, then we give them the test. Make sure they retained it. Okay, valid point. And then other people say, no, don't give it after the test. Give it 30, 60, 90 days after the test. Then see, after the training, then see if they've retained it. The problem with 30, 60, 90 days, or even sometimes the 3 to 7, is we don't know when they're going to start doing that job. So I take 30 people and I teach them how to give the coronavirus test, and I teach them how to keep themselves safe from the coronavirus, because those are our goals. We want to accurately diagnose, and we want to keep our employees safe. I give you all that training, and then I don't assess to find out if you learned how to do it. And now you're back on the job, and you're applying that information immediately, okay? If you're applying it incorrectly, that's a big risk area for us. If I don't know you know how to do that, that becomes a big risk area. It's not a big deal if it's just using some new email system or if it's, remembering how to ring up a sale faster. But if it's something like coronavirus, if it's something like, you know, diagnosing people, or if it's health and safety, or if it's, manufacturing safety related, these are big risk areas. I want to know before you're doing those behaviors that you know how to do them. The problem is the longer I wait, even if I assess right during the learning event, the longer I wait to assess, the less I can say, you're doing this because I taught you how to do it. And the more it's possible that you also know how to do it because you're just doing it every day. It's part of your job. And so you're doing it on your job, and then someone says to you, hey, remember, you're supposed to wash your hands for 20 seconds, not 50. You're only washing your hands for 15 seconds. We're supposed to wash them for 20 seconds. And enough people tell you that. And then when I come back in 60 days, I find out that you're washing your hands for 20 seconds. Was that because of me? Was that because of what you learned on the job? And so the question is always, well, where do we assess? And the reality is, our goal should be to try to assess all of these places, as opposed to just choosing one optimal method. Because alone, each of these has a very distinct disadvantage. But each of them combined covers all of the bases that we're looking to find, that we're testing deep enough at a level, we can show that they learned, and we can show that it was applied, because that's what's really important to us. They know how to apply it, they know how to do it, and they know how to apply it. So one of the methods that we kind of, that's new out there and we kind of talk about, is this learning transfer evaluation model. And it really takes previous models and drives it a little further into what we're trying to do. So it's basically saying, let's take a look at the ways we measure learning. So we start at the basic level. Did you show up? Attendance. Did you show up? Did you pay attention? Levels 1 and 2 are, they're called tiers in this system. Tiers 1 and 2 are just, did you show up and did you participate? Right? Did you go through the class? And we can find that. Perfect. Then we can talk about perceptions. Did you enjoy the class? Do you feel like you learned something? Do you feel kind of empowered to apply this? And then level 4 is, did you learn? Did you learn the tasks that we were teaching you in this class? So when we think back to our timeline, that really falls right in here. So level 1, I'm sorry, I keep saying levels, it's actually tiers, and that's an important distinction to them, so the creators of it. But we think about those tiers, those all happen right there. Tiers 1 through 4, I'm measuring that you showed up, that you attended, that you liked it, or that you feel positive about it. And if you didn't, why didn't you? And then, did you learn something? Do you know how to do that right now? Because I just need to know that you know how to do it right now. Then it goes to the higher levels, which are about, can you make the right decisions based on what we trained you? Can you do the things that we trained, right? Can you actually do the tasks that we trained? And then level 7 is about, are you able to do that on your own? Are you able to do that without anybody telling you what to do? Has it transferred? Has it sunk in? Every time you wash your hands, are you washing them for 20 seconds? And then that final level 8 is those effects of transfers. That's from that first slide where we talked about the business impact. So if all that happened, that tier 8 should tell you that now we're seeing an impact. Now we're seeing that increase in the number of diagnoses of coronavirus. Now we're seeing our employees catch the coronavirus even less. We're seeing the spread of that disease within the hospital even less. And so he thinks about these tiers, and what we like about the tiers is they take into consideration both the level or depth at which we're training and the when we should train. And so when we look at that, items 5 and 6 are basically saying, look, we need to come back in after training, and we need to measure, again, that you know how to make the right decisions and that you know how to perform the tasks. Tier 7 is where we really look at these metrics and say, okay, Are they doing them on their own? Can they do them without training? Can they do them now? Has it sunk in that they're doing it every time? And then level the tier 8 is over here on the side. We're not, that's back where I said that's the impact level. And so that's what we always try and I like this model. It's not my model. It was created by Dr. Will Thalheimer in conjunction with a number of leaders in the learning industry. What I like about the model is it's really the first time we've spelled out as an industry that we need to be consistently thinking about both the depth of learning and the frequency of measurement and the placement of measurement, as opposed to what we always did before, which is tack on a test. Who gives a damn how good the test is or not? Just tack it on at the end of the course, and we'll say that is our evidence of did they learn. And so that's really what we're trying to do here, is help people create these structures at which time they know when to measure. And then we come in and really run a detailed statistical analysis to help them understand, did they learn? Can they apply it? And if they're not applying it, now we've got a lot of data to help us say, why aren't they applying it? And what can we do to help them apply it? Because we know they know it. Here's the data. We know they know it. If they're not doing it, they're not doing it for some reason other than just not knowing it. And so that's why we like this model. That's why we kind of we want to think about anytime we're suggesting a measurement strategy, that it have those two components in it, that we're thinking about the frequency of measurement and that we're thinking about the depth of the measurement at all times. And so few measurement models have done that accurately. So that's really what we're shooting for. So any questions on that? It's a lot.
Now, I know I want to break down that a lot of times, or some of the times, people think just because they know that, maybe you can emphasize this for the other people here, but just because they know, that means that they're going to do better.
Yeah, and we've always been burdened with that. As a learning industry has always been burdened with that, with the belief that because I taught you how to do something, you know how to do it. And that's actually, I had done some research with a friend of mine, like, because that's crazy. Like, we all know that's crazy, right? We all know how to do plenty of things in our life that we don't do on a regular basis. So the idea that just having knowledge will mean you will change your behavior is crazy. Behaviors get changed because we have knowledge or skills or ability, but they also get changed because we have a motivation to change our behaviors, and they get changed because we have the opportunity to change our behaviors, right? I can want to make $1 million. I could want to make $1 million. I could have all the knowledge in the world on how to make $1 million in the stock market. But if the stock market goes and tanks, I don't have the opportunity, right? All of those have to be in play. I know how to lose weight. I have a treadmill sitting over here that has 8 inches of dust on it. I don't have the motivation to lose weight. So you have to have knowledge, motivation, and ability. And so our job is really to focus on, can we measure that you have the ability? And then what we can do is we can have discussions. We can have discussions with the business to say, what's going on with their opportunity, or what's going on with their motivation to keep them from doing this?
Right.
For like 100 years in this right. world, we basically say, okay, train them how to do their job. Cool. They go out, they don't do their job, and they go, oh, they need more training. No, most people don't need more knowledge on how to do a job. In most cases, they need motivation or opportunity. And so that's a big part of what we do, is when we think about that kind of trinity of ability, motivation, and opportunity, ability is the one we can measure really well. So now we can talk about what's happening in terms of your motivation, or what's happening in terms of your employee's opportunity. They know how to do it. What are you doing that's keeping them from doing it? So that's a big part of how we use our data. It's not just to say, look, I did my job, you all go away. We really want to use the data to say, okay, what else is happening in the company? And I tell this story frequently, that I had been asked to create a training for 16,000 call center operators. because our first training didn't work very well. It was going to cost the company about $2 million to put everybody through this because our first training didn't work very well. Well, we had the data that said, no, they know how to sell this stuff. I don't know why they're not selling this stuff, but they know how to sell this stuff. Because we had that data, we went back to the business and found out that we were asking them to sell product A, but product B was giving them $5 if they tried to sell it. So they were also trying to sell product B. They didn't care about selling product A. They didn't have the motivation to sell product A. They had motivation to sell product B. They were getting $5. And as soon as we realized that, this wasn't an issue of knowledge, this wasn't an issue of ability, wasn't something that we needed to retrain them on. We just needed to create the opportunity. We had needed to create the motivation for them to sell product A. And we saved ourselves a couple $1 million in training just by recognizing that fact. So that's really how we use our data, is more to help change those behaviors by ensuring that they learn, ensuring that they have the ability to do those tasks.